was just past midnight when my phone started to ring. Normally that wouldn't mean much, except that my phone was in Do Not Disturb mode, and only my family could get through. I remember the time exactly because I'd just turned off the TV. The digital clock on my nightstand read 12:04 a.m. when the sound sliced through the silence. It wasn't my usual ringtone either. It was a default tone, the one I hadn't used in years. I hesitated for a few seconds before picking it up. The number was unknown caller. No name, no digits, just that phrase glowing on the screen. Something inside me whispered not to answer, but curiosity won. Hello? At first, nothing. Just a faint, static hum, like wind brushing across a microphone. I repeated, "Hello?" Then a man's voice came through, rough, distant, like he was speaking through an old landline. He said my name. "Emily." I froze. It wasn't the wrong number kind of moment. He said it the way someone knows you. Slow, familiar. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to sound calm. He chuckled, a soft, almost breathy laugh. "I didn't think you'd still be awake." My heart started pounding. The voice was eerily familiar, but I couldn't place it. My ex, my co-worker, no. It sounded older, gravelly, weathered. "Who are you?" I demanded. The voice ignored my question. "You still live on Sycamore Street, right?" I shot up in bed. "How do you know that?" A long pause. Then he whispered, "Because I'm outside." The call ended. I remember sitting there, frozen, staring at the dark screen, too terrified to even move the curtain. I lived alone. A small ground-floor apartment with thin curtains and a street lamp right outside that cast long shadows on my walls. I debated calling the police, but what would I say? A stranger called me and said he's outside. It sounded like a prank, until my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a notification from my security app. Front door motion detected. I turned the brightness all the way down and peeked at the feed. The camera showed the front step, empty at first, and then, just for a moment, a blur of movement at the edge of the frame. A shoulder, someone leaning out of view. Then the feed went black. The app crashed. That's when I finally called the police. I remember my hands shaking so badly that I could barely press the numbers. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line and lock myself in a room. Minutes later, the officers arrived. They checked the front yard and the street. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of a break-in. But when one of them shined his flashlight on the front window, he noticed something that made my stomach twist. Fingerprints. They were smeared across the glass like someone had been leaning in, trying to look inside. The officers suggested it might have been a prank, maybe a wrong number. But I knew what I'd heard. The way he said my name. The way he knew my street. I stayed with a friend for a few nights after that. She lived across town in a gated complex, so I figured it would be safer. The first 2 nights were uneventful. I started convincing myself it was some twisted coincidence. Maybe a scam call, maybe my imagination running wild. But on the 3rd night, again, just past midnight, her home phone rang. That alone was weird because no one ever used it. She picked up, half asleep, then frowned and handed it to me. "It's for you," she said. I pressed the receiver to my ear. "Emily," the voice said again, soft, almost affectionate. Then, like before, "I told you. I always find you." The line clicked. That phone didn't even have caller ID. It wasn't connected to my number in any way. The police later traced the original call logs on my cell, but according to them, no such calls existed. No record, no number, nothing. It's been 3 years. I moved twice, new phone, new number. But some nights, around midnight, my phone screen lights up for no reason, not ringing, just the glow. And for a split second, I swear I see unknown caller flash across before it disappears. And I never wait to see if it rings again. It was a Thursday night in late October, one of those crisp evenings when silence seems heavier than usual. I had just finished grading a stack of papers, I'm a high school English teacher and was halfway through brushing my teeth when my phone started to vibrate on the bathroom counter. The clock read 12:17 a.m. I almost ignored it. At that hour, it's never good news. But the screen said private number, and for reasons I still don't understand, I answered. Hello? There was a soft crackle, then breathing, slow, steady, too deliberate to be a butt dial. Who is this? I asked. A man's voice finally spoke, flat and calm. You left your classroom light on. I froze. I live nearly 30 minutes from the school. What did you say? He repeated, word for word, same tone. You left your classroom light on. My throat went dry. Who is this? How do you know where I work? Silence. Then a faint hum, like old fluorescent lights buzzing through the line. I hung up and stood there, toothbrush in hand, staring at my reflection. My first thought was, maybe it was a colleague messing with me, but it was after midnight. Nobody I worked with would do that. Still, I convinced myself it was just a prank. I rinsed my mouth, turned off the bathroom light, and went to bed. When I pulled into the school parking lot the next morning, I noticed something strange. The custodial cruise cart was parked outside my classroom door, but the hallway lights were off. I peeked through the small window in the door, and the overhead light inside was on. I hadn't left it that way. I'm obsessive about turning everything off. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and right away felt it. The smell of aftershave, strong and unfamiliar. On my desk was a sticky note. Only 2 words, written in red marker. Still grading? I left immediately and reported it to the principal. He said there had been no sign of forced entry, and that maybe one of the night janitors had a weird sense of humor. That explanation worked, until that night. At exactly 12:17 a.m., my phone rang again. Same private number. My heart sank. I answered on the second ring, trying to sound annoyed instead of afraid. If this is supposed to be funny, it's not. The voice came again, identical in tone. You forgot the windows this time? I jumped out of bed and went straight to my living room window. The blinds were open, and my reflection stared back at me in the dark glass. I whispered, "What windows?" He chuckled, low and satisfied. You'll see me if you look long enough. The call ended. I stood there, every light in the house off, staring into the backyard through the thin reflection. I couldn't see anyone. But the longer I looked, the more I started noticing shapes. The fence, the tree, the faint outline of the shed, until something behind the tree moved. A figure stepped out, just far enough for the motion sensor to trigger. The light flicked on for a second, catching a face, blurred by distance, but I could see a man's mouth forming what looked like a grin. Then he turned and ran. I called 911 immediately. Police arrived within minutes. They checked the yard, the street, everything. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. They told me to keep the doors locked and call if it happened again. That morning, I took a personal day and stayed home. I closed every curtain, ignored every email, and tried to calm down. At noon, I finally checked my voicemail. There was one new message, time-stamped 12:20 a.m. The recording was 5 seconds long. At first, just breathing. Then a whisper. I liked your story about the red scarf. That's what made my knees give out. Because that story, the one about the red scarf, wasn't something I'd ever told publicly. It was a short story I'd written in college. Only one person had ever read it. My ex, Ryan. I hadn't seen him in nearly 3 years, not since the restraining order. I called the police again and told them everything, but without a traceable number, there wasn't much they could do. They advised me to change my number, which I did that same day. A week passed quietly. I started sleeping again. Then one night I came home to find an envelope taped to my front door. No return address. Inside was a printed photo of my classroom, empty, desk chair pushed in, and on the chalkboard, written in red, "Nice story, Miss L." The photo had been printed on school copier paper. The police reopened the case. They checked security footage from the school, but the cameras in that hallway had been offline for maintenance. They questioned Ryan, but he had an airtight alibi. The calls stopped after that, but something else replaced them. Every few nights, at exactly 12:17 a.m., my house phone, not my cell, rings once. A single chime, no number. Just one ring, then silence. The phone company says it's a line glitch. The cops say it's coincidence. But sometimes, when I lie awake waiting for it, I swear I can still smell that same aftershave drifting through the window. And I know, whoever it was, he didn't want to scare me for fun. He wanted me to remember something I'd tried to forget. I used to work the overnight shift as a receptionist in a corporate building downtown. The company rented 4 floors in a 15-story tower, but after 9 p.m., everyone was gone, except security and me. My job was simple: answer calls, log maintenance requests, and make sure the front doors stayed locked. It wasn't exciting, but the pay was decent, and I liked the quiet. The building had that sterile, fluorescent hum that felt almost peaceful once the day shift chaos ended. It was a Tuesday night, late March. Rain tapped against the big glass windows, and thunder rolled far off in the distance. I remember because I'd just made myself a cup of coffee when the landline on the reception desk started to ring. That phone almost never rang at night. I frowned and checked the caller ID. It read, "Internal call, EXT 1432. That was strange. Extension 1432 belonged to the conference room on the 12th floor. The entire 12th floor had been closed for renovation for nearly 2 weeks. No lights, no power, no employees. Still, protocol said to answer. "Corporate reception, this is Kelly." At first nothing, just a soft hiss, like wind over a microphone. Then faintly, a man's voice. "Is anyone down there?" I felt a prickle crawl up the back of my neck. "Yes, this is reception. Who's calling?" More static then. "You shouldn't be alone." The line went dead. I sat there staring at the handset, trying to convince myself it was a crossed line. The internal system was old after all. Still, the unease lingered. A few minutes later, I called security on the radio. Marcus, the night guard, answered. "Everything good?" I told him about the call. He laughed it off. "Probably the wiring. The 12th floor's phone lines are half cut for the remodel." I agreed, even laughed a little. But part of me didn't buy it. Around 12:30 a.m., I started hearing faint thuds through the ceiling. Slow, uneven, like someone walking in heavy boots. The 12th floor was right above me. I grabbed my flashlight and took the service elevator with Marcus. When the doors opened, the floor was dark except for a single emergency light flickering near the far hallway. The air smelled like drywall and dust. "Hello?" Marcus called out. Only the hum of the elevator answered. We walked the corridor, checking each office, empty. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, an incoming call from the reception line, the one we'd just left downstairs. I answered. "Hello?" There was breathing on the other end, slow and deliberate. Then, my own voice came through. My voice from a few minutes ago saying, "Corporate reception, this is Kelly." Word for word, the line cut. Marcus stared at me, confused. "You just played a recording?" I shook my head. We both went back to the elevator fast. When we returned to the lobby, the phone was ringing again. Same internal extension, 1432. Marcus picked it up this time and hit speakerphone. "Corporate reception," he said, the same static. Then the voice again, raspy, distant, male. "Don't leave me here." Marcus slammed the phone down. "Maintenance is coming in the morning," he muttered. "We're done with this floor tonight." The rest of the shift passed without another call. We signed out at 6 a.m., joked about haunted phones, and went home. I told myself I'd forget about it, but 2 nights later, the phone rang again, 12:03 a.m., same extension. I answered, and this time the voice was clearer. "Kelly," it said, "it's cold up here." I froze. I hadn't told anyone at work about that call except Marcus. "How do you know my name?" I whispered. "Because you talked to me," the voice said. "You and Marcus. You left me in the dark." Then came the sound of something dragging, like metal scraping across concrete. I slammed the phone down and called security again. A different guard was on duty that night. When I asked for Marcus, he said, "Marcus? He quit yesterday. Didn't even finish his shift." I didn't sleep that day. I came back that night determined to record the calls. Sure enough, right after midnight, the phone rang again. I hit record and answered. "Who are you?" The voice replied, "You shouldn't be here." Then silence, followed by faint music, an old radio tune, static and fading. When I played back the recording later, the line was blank. No voice, no static, just a low electrical hum. The next morning, I went to HR to explain what had been happening. They looked uncomfortable. The manager pulled up a file on her computer, then sighed. "You weren't supposed to be told this, but since you mentioned that extension, someone did die here last year. Construction foreman. Fell through an open shaft on the 12th floor." She paused, glancing around before lowering her voice. "His name was Marcus Caldwell." I felt dizzy. "Marcus, what? The security guard?" She frowned. "No. Marcus was the foreman. The security company hired your guard 6 months ago." Same name. Same deep voice. I tried to brush it off as coincidence. But that night, when I came in for my shift, the phone on the desk was missing. Facilities said they'd removed it. Old wiring issue, they said. But around midnight, the fax machine came to life instead. Paper slid out slowly, line by line, until a single sentence appeared in faded ink. "I told you not to come back."